You know, there's something magnetic about Cold War survival engineering. A time when ordinary people, not soldiers or scientists, built underground fortresses with their own hands, preparing for a world that might have ended overnight. But here's the part history forgot to emphasize. Some of those backyard bunkers built in the 1950s and 60s by families with no access to modern materials or power tools are still standing today. And their secret? Not luck. Not miracle cement, but a design principle so clever and so simple that it quietly reshaped how we build even now. It's called the floating foundation, and it may be the most overlooked survival trick of the nuclear age. In the tense years after World War II, fear was no longer abstract. The mushroom cloud was real, its image burned into newspapers and television screens. Governments told citizens to duck and cover, but many wanted something sturdier than a school desk for protection. By the mid-1950s, magazines like Popular Mechanics and Life began publishing do-it-yourself bunker plans. They promised safety, privacy, and the illusion of control in an age of uncertainty. Some were dug into hillsides, others were concrete cubes beneath suburban lawns. But they all faced the same engineering nightmare. How do you keep concrete from cracking underground, where the earth itself is always shifting, swelling, and freezing? See, the earth is never still. Moisture seeps in. Frost lifts the soil in winter and drops it in spring. Groundwater presses on walls and slabs. Rigid foundations, the kind used for houses, just weren't built for that kind of stress. Shelter after shelter began showing cracks within a few years. Walls leaked, floors buckled. Some early fallout shelters literally filled with water after the first heavy rain. To survive underground, the shelter itself needed to move with the earth, not against it. And that's when civil engineers proposed something radical for the time: a flexible base that could absorb motion rather than resist it. The floating foundation didn't actually float like a raft on water. Instead, it was built to act like one. Builders laid down a thick bed of gravel and sand beneath the shelter's floor, sometimes up to a foot deep. The gravel distributed the weight evenly, while the sand formed a cushion. When the soil shifted, the entire structure could subtly move or settle without cracking. And when groundwater rose, it drained harmlessly through the gravel instead of pooling against the concrete. It was low-tech brilliance, a silent partnership between concrete and earth. Instead of fighting nature, the engineers learned to cooperate with it. Imagine the shelter as a heavy ship resting on a bed of pebbles. Each tiny stone can shift just enough to release pressure. This means no single point takes all the stress. The design had three main benefits: drainage. Water filtered through the gravel, keeping the base dry. Flexibility. Small shifts in soil no longer caused major cracks. And longevity. Less moisture meant less corrosion and decay. In field tests during the late 1950s, engineers found that a properly layered gravel sand base could double or triple the lifespan of underground concrete. It was cheap, simple, and nearly foolproof. A working-class answer to Cold War anxiety. Across the U.S. Midwest and the British countryside, these shelters still exist. Inspectors crawling through them decades later often report the same thing. Metal doors rusted, air filters long dead, but the concrete shell still sound. No major cracks, no shifting corners, no sign of water damage. Even modern basements built in the 1980s sometimes show more structural wear than these Cold War relics. It's a humbling reminder that good engineering doesn't always need high technology, just a deep understanding of nature. If you're building a modern storm shelter, root cellar, or even a buried container workshop, this principle still works beautifully. Here's how the old manuals described it, and how you can still use it today. First, excavate 12 to 18 inches deeper than your intended floor level. Add about 6 inches of compacted gravel. Top that with a few inches of coarse sand. Lay a vapor barrier or geotextile fabric, and then pour your concrete slab on top. The result? A foundation that moves with the ground, not against it. And if you're building in a rainy or flood-prone area, add perforated drainage pipes, also called French drains, around the perimeter. Wrap them in landscape fabric, cover with gravel, and you've just recreated one of the most reliable underground systems ever built. During the height of the Cold War, civil defense researchers conducted shockwave tests, simulating how ground tremors from nearby explosions would affect bunkers. The findings were surprising. Rigid shelters often cracked or collapsed outright, but floating foundation shelters flexed, absorbed the shock, and stayed intact. The gravel acted like a natural shock absorber, dispersing energy instead of concentrating it. That discovery didn't just save backyard bunkers, it influenced major civil projects. The same principle was later adapted into bridge design, airport runways, and even skyscrapers in earthquake zones. A humble Cold War hack became a cornerstone of modern resilient architecture. So why does this work so well? Because the interface between two loose, granular layers, like sand and gravel, dissipates stress in every direction. Instead of one crack spreading through a solid slab, micro-movements absorb the tension. It's like comparing a rigid stick to a bundle of flexible reeds. One snaps, the other bends. By creating that floating buffer, Cold War builders unknowingly invented an early form of what engineers now call base isolation, the same principle that protects earthquake-proof buildings today. It's ironic, isn't it? People driven by fear of destruction ended up discovering one of the most sustainable construction ideas of the century. They didn't have polymer sealants or waterproof membranes, no 3D modeling or soil pressure simulations, just shovels, cement, and a sense of urgency. And yet, through trial and error, they uncovered something even modern engineers still respect: the wisdom of working with the earth, not against it. For off-grid builders, homesteaders, and preppers, the message is simple. Durability doesn't always mean complexity. When you're building for survival, whether it's a storm shelter, a cellar, or even a cabin foundation, start with the same principle that saved countless Cold War shelters. Let your structure float. Let it breathe. Let the ground do what it always does, and design for movement, not perfection. Archaeologists exploring forgotten bunkers today often find these gravel layers perfectly intact, dry, stable, functional, while everything above has rusted away. It's almost poetic. The simplest part of the design became the one that survived. And that's the real legacy of Cold War engineering: solutions born from fear, but perfected through understanding. Because when you respect the ground beneath you, time itself becomes your ally. So the next time you see an old fallout shelter diagram or a Cold War survival manual, look closer. You're not just seeing history, you're seeing timeless engineering wisdom. If this kind of lost-era survival science fascinates you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We uncover the forgotten inventions that quietly shaped the modern world, and sometimes still keep us safe today. Thanks for watching.